Have y'all heard of Greta Thunberg? She is the Swedish 16-year-old environmental activist who sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to go to the UN Climate Summit. And she is standing in front of the White House, and all of her friends in the United States are now joining her. And she is standing for climate, and she is standing for the environment, and she is standing for a world that works for everyone in her own way. And what's really amazing about Greta, she's an activist, is that she has Asperger's syndrome, she has OCD, and she has selective mutism. And yet these things that we have in the past historically looked at as somebody's illness or somebody's challenge that they must overcome, these things are the very things that are making her so good at being an environmental activist. And what she says about her diagnoses is she says, that basically means I only speak when I think it's necessary, and now is one of those moments.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you our guest speaker today. Her name is Kristen Ashley. And when we're thinking about our theme for the month, Spirituality in Action, Kristen became an obvious choice to come to us and to be with us today for so many reasons. And I'm going to try very hard to keep this introduction to 2 minutes or less so that she can have a full maximum time, because there are so many things I could say about Kristen. One thing that is important for you to know is that Kristen has more than 15 years of experience studying, teaching, and practicing religious science, science of mind. And if those of you who've been in our movement and in our teaching for a while know that you cannot practice this for 15 years and not have massive growth and major changes in your life. And she lives in a way that demonstrates that she is actually practicing these principles, not just talking about them. How do I know that? I know Kristen as a member of the leadership of the Next Gen Retreat, which is a retreat for young adults between the ages of 18 and 35 that is sponsored by a minister who is based in Seattle. And Kristen, as a member of that leadership team, not only is responsible for helping to plan this multi-day retreat for young adults, but also being involved every day of the retreat in leading activities and speaking. How else do I know Kristen? I know Kristen because she's been my student. She is a ministerial student in the School for Spiritual Leadership and is in training to become a licensed minister within Centers for Spiritual Living. And Kristen is one of the students I have had who I have complete confidence in moving forward and being an example for inclusion in the way that our churches are led and in the way we present our philosophy to the world. And the third way that I know Kristen is I know Kristen as a delightful, funny, compassionate, totally committed friend. She is an amazing person, and I am sure you are going to feel that as well as her depth and her wisdom and her knowledge related to science of mind. Please join me in welcoming Kristen Ashley.
Hello. I don't know how I'm going to follow that song and that introduction. Oh my gosh. So I have to say that I lived in Texas, just really quick before I kind of get into the meat and bones. I lived in Texas for 10 years, and I lived in Dallas for a year. And so coming back here was just really exciting, and I was like, oh my gosh, I recognize all of these things, and got really excited about Whataburger. love Whataburger. And I have a friend here. I lived here 13 years ago, and I have a friend who came this morning, and I'm not going to say any more about that because I'll cry, that I knew from 13 years ago. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be in front of y'all. So, standing on the cutting edge. I'm sure you guys have all been waiting on the edges of your seats for what that means and what are we standing on the edge of. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, spoiler alert, I'm going to give you the end at the beginning. What we are standing on, each and every one of us in this room, is the cutting edge of a world that is working for everyone. We are. If you're in this room, you're on that cutting edge with me. You're already here. You're already on this edge. It's already happening. And so, first, if we're going to look at this cutting edge that we're standing on, first we need to look at the world that's working. What does a world that works for everyone look like? Because I'm sure you have a vision of what that looks like in your mind. You have what you're working towards in your own life and in the issues and the causes that you're working towards. I know that I do. And yet, a world that works for everyone is so much bigger than one individual vision. It's so much bigger. We have to stop and think, what does a world that works for everyone look like to somebody who is so radically different from myself that I cannot even imagine what their daily life is like? What does a world that works look like for that person? What does a world that works for everyone look like for somebody who dresses completely different from me, who lives on the other side of the globe, whose skin color is different than mine, who parents their children in a way that I don't think their children are going to be okay, but that's my own judgment? What does a world that works for everyone look like for everyone? That's where we're headed. That's that cutting edge. That's this edge that we're standing right on. I'm not going to stand on the edge because I might fall off. But what is that cutting edge? That's the cutting edge that we're standing on. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is this cutting edge that we're standing on to this world that works for everyone in this vision that is so much grander than any one of us can fathom, and yet together as a community we're catching a glimpse together. So what's this cutting edge? What do we know about this cutting edge? The first thing that we're all standing on, and the first thing that I know about this cutting edge is that it is uncomfortable. It's exactly what you want to hear about where you're at, right? It's uncomfortable. Because it requires growth. It requires massive growth. This cutting edge is constantly cutting forward into the newness, into the next thing, into the greater vision. It's not stagnant. And therefore, we are called to step up into this vision of this new world that is being created in every moment, every day, on this cutting edge, moving forward, bringing the entirety of the planet along with us. And the reality is that we're always uncomfortable. We're either uncomfortable because we're stagnant and because we aren't growing, or we're uncomfortable because we're growing. And so we get to choose. Which would you prefer? And honestly, I have moments where I'm like, I'm just going to stagnate and eat a cookie. And then I have moments where I'm growing. And I choose more and more and more those moments of growth, because the growth gets fun and it gets exciting, even if it is uncomfortable. Get used to the discomfort. I'm sure none of y'all know about getting used to the discomfort, right? And another reason that it's uncomfortable is because mistakes are going to be made on the growing edge. Because we're all just figuring it out together, right? We don't know. So mistakes are going to be made. As Tracy mentioned, I'm in ministerial school. And I took a class last term. And it was my favorite class. And it was taught by one of my favorite professors. He would just ask he would put you on this, Kristen, you're going to answer the next question, so you don't even know where you're headed yet. And then he would just ask a random question. Sometimes it had to do with what we were talking about, and sometimes it didn't. One day it was, Kristen, what were the 2 trees in the Garden of Eden? I was like, what? Oh my God. So this class was amazing, though. We got bonded together as a community because we're just like, good job every time somebody answered something correctly. But anyways, one day we were talking about race consciousness. And he said race consciousness several times. And then another student said class consciousness. And our professor said, I've never heard that term. What do you mean race consciousness? What are you talking about? And the student said, race consciousness can be really triggering to people. And he was like, that doesn't make any, he kind of brushed it off. And then we had a black woman in our class who stepped up and she said, no, this term is uncomfortable for me, because even though we here in our class understand and know that we don't mean race as in race, the color of your skin, we mean race as in the whole, not everybody understands that. And so it's very triggering to me to hear race consciousness and have to try to figure out if you understand that that means all of us. And so what we're doing is we're using the terms class consciousness and collective consciousness. And my professor, I'm not sure how old he is, but he's easily in his 70s, old white man, amazing, brilliant. He goes, oh, I had never thought of that. Thank you for teaching me. And immediately course corrected. And for the rest of that class and every other class that we had, he was extremely careful to only use the terms class consciousness and collective consciousness. And it was such a powerful, amazing, beautiful example of how we can make a mistake just because we don't know. And then we can listen when the person tells us what the mistake was. We can listen and we can accept it, and we can not deny their experience or deny what they're saying, but simply accept it and say, okay, I want to make sure that this world works for everyone. And so I am willing to do what you need so that this class can work for everyone. Because if we can make the class work for everyone, then we can make the world work for everyone. So there will be mistakes, and yet we can navigate the mistakes together. We can have compassion for ourselves and for the people around us. What else do I know about the cutting edge that we're all standing on? What I know is that it is sparsely populated. We are not out here with the whole world, right? Because if we were, it wouldn't be cutting anymore, it'd be dull. We are out here by ourselves, risking looking ridiculous, sometimes actually looking ridiculous. And we are forging our own way. And the way that I know this is because there's only about, the last number that I heard, 40,000 people in Science Minds. And we're not the only people on the cutting edge, but we are on the cutting edge, right? And the beautiful thing about it being sparsely populated and about risking looking ridiculous is at some point you just stop caring. I read this really fun, I thought it was funny, we'll see if y'all agree, funny meme on Facebook. And it said, I'm at the point with my, I'm gonna edit just a little. I'm at the point with my spirituality where I've finally stopped giving a crap about my weird public habits. If you see me at the park putting dirt in a jar and talking to a tree with a bag of rocks in my hand, mind your own business. Right? And that's, if you see me out meditating or, I have to go home, I can't stay out because I need to pray, or I've got my crystals, or I'm aligning my chakras, or whatever it is, at some point we just don't care, because what we know is that we're on the cutting edge and we're birthing something new together, right? The next thing that I know about the cutting edge is that it's sharp. I know, y'all's minds are blown right now with my brilliance. It has to be sharp. It has to be sharp, or it wouldn't cut through anything. We wouldn't be able to birth that new vision. And what sharp is it means that it is precise. It is clear. And that's how we get to be in our intentionality and in our thinking and in the way that we show up and in the words that we are speaking. We get to be sharp. We no longer have the luxury of carelessness in the way that we live our lives and the way that we're showing up in the words that are coming out of our mouths. And I know y'all have never had the experience of something coming back to bite you in the bum. But when I was first setting on this path, I was complaining about my mother. I'm sure none of y'all have done that either. And I was flailing wildly. I don't know. We'd had some conversation. I don't even remember. I love my mother. She's wonderful. She'll probably watch this. Hi, Mom. And I'm complaining and I'm flailing wildly and I knock over my entire venti upside down caramel macchiato all over the floor. And I could have gotten upset, but instead I looked and I just busted out laughing because I was like, thank you, Spirit, for this beautiful immediate reminder that I am always creating. My word is always creative, whether I want it to be or not. And so thank you for stopping me in my tracks so that I can say I love my mother, so that I can have a beautiful relationship, so that I can step into the bigger picture of what can be in my life. And so we get to be precise. We have these little reminders that show up, and we get to be precise. We get to be clear. We get to set our intentions, and we get to walk on that cutting edge, on that sharpness, knowing that what we are saying, the way that we are acting, what we are doing and believing and showing up and how we're connecting with one another, it's all creating, it is all birthing this amazing vision of a world that works for everyone. All of it. We are on that sharpness. What else do I know about the cutting edge? It is uncharted. We don't know where we're headed. I have most of y'all been reading A New Republic of the Heart. That book is amazing. If you have not read it, oh my gosh, go pick it up. It's incredible. What Terry Patton says in that book about where we're going being uncharted, he says, poised as we are on the edge of something new, none of us knows yet quite how to enact it. We are feeling our way. Our capacities and consciousness are the growing edges of something to come. It is uncharted. We are forging our way. We are cutting into new paths. We don't know where we're headed. And so what we must have is faith and trust. And I think that faith gets undervalued in our teaching in general. I don't know about here at your center, but in general, faith isn't talked about. What we talk about is the law, and you speak your word into the law, and that is true, but there's a level of faith that is necessary to birth this bigger vision into your life. Last year, we moved from Asheville, North Carolina to Napa, California. And I flew into California the first time in 2015 for the Next Gen Retreat. And as we're flying in, I was like, oh, I'm going to live here. I'm going to go to ministerial school, and I'm going to live in California. It took me 3 years. And really, after 3 years, I still didn't know what I was doing. So I was like, well, let's just go. And so I got in my car, and I just went. I had no plan. I had a plan, but it fell through. So I get in my car, and so this plan falls through, and I go, oh, am I still going to go? And then I was like, yes, I'm still going to go. And so I drive across the country. I put some stuff in the car. I leave my partner. I leave our 5 animals. I leave our house. I leave all our stuff. I was like, I'll be back for you. Should take a month. Took a lot longer than a month, but that's okay. And I drove across the country to the 2018 CSL convention in Irvine, California. And once the convention was over, I was going to be homeless. I had no place to live. I had no job lined up. I didn't know where I was going to live. And I was going to be out of money. So I had just enough saved to get myself to and through convention. And while at convention, I met so many amazing people, including a minister who offered me the youth director position on the spot. Hi, my name's Reverend Jay Lang, and I'd like you to come be my youth director in Napa, California. And I was like, right? And then I had another minister that I got to know over the week, and at the end of the week, she comes up to me and she's like, hey, we have a spare bedroom down in the Bay. Why don't you just come stay with us, rent-free, just figure it out. Well, you don't have to buy food, just eat our food, come live in our house. We love you. We think you're great. Right? And it was a really incredible story. And I am in Napa, California, and I am the youth director, and Jay Lang is amazing. And I stayed with the Reverend Kathy Sharmer for a month, and it was incredible. But it required faith. It required that leap, because I could not have planned that. I didn't know those people exist. I didn't know Napa, California existed. I thought it was just something they put on wine labels. I didn't know it was a real place. So we must have faith to step into that uncharted waters to birth this new vision of a world that works for everyone. And the beautiful thing is that unlike a cross-country move, the world that works for everyone, we're doing together. And so we can step out together and we can have faith together and we can hold each other up. And when my faith wavers, I can go to you and I can be like, oh my God. And you can be like, I've got this. It's good. We're good. And then when that happens back, I can be like, no, we've got this. We're stepping into uncharted territory and we must have faith. What else I know about the cutting edge is that it is innovative. We have to be innovative. We have to be wildly creative in ways that we have never thought to be creative before. It's kind of the definition of creative, and yet it's hard to think about. What does that mean, innovative? We must be radicalists. We must be transformationists. We must be activists. And we can do that in whatever way works for us. Have y'all heard of Greta Thunberg? She is the Swedish 16-year-old environmental activist who sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to go to the UN Climate Summit. And she is standing in front of the White House, and all of her friends in the United States are now joining her. And she is standing for climate, and she is standing for the environment, and she is standing for a world that works for everyone in her own way. And what's really amazing about Greta, she's an activist, is that she has Asperger's syndrome, she has OCD, and she has selective mutism. And yet these things that we have in the past historically looked at as somebody's illness or somebody's challenge that they must overcome, these things are the very things that are making her so good at being an environmental activist. And what she says about her diagnoses is she says, that basically means I only speak when I think it's necessary, and now is one of those moments. So we get to be innovative about ourselves and our own lives, and we get to look at what are those things that I consider flaws, but maybe are the exact piece of the puzzle that the world needs to birth this new vision of a world that's working for everyone into form. Maybe my flaws are not flaws after all, but are an integral piece. Maybe spirit is all there is. Maybe it's true of myself, of the things that I don't like when I look in the mirror, of the way that I'm too loud, or the way that my laugh is weird, or whatever it is. Those are just my own things that I say sometimes. Whatever it is for you, maybe those flaws are exactly what this world needs. And I'm going to say it's not a maybe. This world needs what you have to offer, whether your judgment says it's a flaw or not. What you have to offer is what the world needs. A self-proclaimed transformationist, Sharif Abdullah, he literally wrote the book, Creating a World That Works for All. he talks about, he talks about a lot of things, but he basically says what a transformationist is it somebody that looks at the systems and the way the world is not working and then steps back and gets a bigger perspective and says, hey, we could do this instead. This might work. And what he says is we've got to get over our progressivism and our conservatism and elevate the conversation to a whole new level. We must get innovative. We must get creative. Terry Patton, in A New Republic of the Heart, also says, this means striving for and encouraging as much clarity and excellence and generosity and creativity as we can. And by intending to live a life of continual growth and transformation and encouraging that in others, we create conditions for actual cultural advancement. We are innovative by standing here, by doing this work, by being in these seats, by constantly recommitting, making the new commitment to intentionality and to growth in every moment of every day. And even in those moments when we just eat a cookie and stagnate for a second, in all of it, we are standing on that cutting edge and we are birthing that new vision of a world that works for everyone. Finally, the last thing that I know about this cutting edge is that it is connected. We're all in it together. I've mentioned it several times before, but if you look at the blade of a very sharp knife under a microscope, it is extremely tightly packed and everything is in exact alignment together. And that is us. We are packed together. We are in it together. We are so connected. I have one more person to talk about, Pia Klemp, if any of y'all heard of her. She is the German ship captain facing 20 years in prison with 9 of her crew for saving drowning refugees in the Mediterranean seas. They literally motor up and down the coast and save people who are drowning. That's what she does. And now she's being persecuted for it. She's facing 20 years in prison. And she did an amazing TED Talk. I highly recommend that you go look at it. But what she says in this TED Talk, she says, we simply did what had to be done, rescuing people where they can be rescued. And now we in CSL don't really buy into that rescuing thing. I mean, I feel like if somebody's drowning in the water, we should probably, save them. But in general, we don't. We step out of that victim triangle, right? Of there's a victim that I have to come rescue, but then they make me into the perpetrator, and it's this really messy triangle. But when we step out of that and we stand on this cutting edge, we bring along the rest of the planet with us. Even though we're on the cutting edge, we're moving forward, we're innovating, everybody else is coming along with us. The rest of the knife comes along behind us. And so by the very act of stepping up and living our lives in a way that is birthing this new vision into form, we are rescuing, or to put it a better way, we are co-creating together with people that don't even realize they're creating yet, this world that works for everyone. And so my challenge for you today, Ernest, in his Sermon by the Sea, he says, find 1,000 people who know and use the truth, and the world will no longer be famished. How important is it that each one of us in his simple way, in their simple way, shall live from God, to God, with God, in God, and to each other? And so what I want to tell you today is that we are on the cutting edge. You're already there. And so as we look out on this cutting edge and we look into this world and we see things that maybe we don't want to see, we must remember that that is secondary causation. And we step back and we stand in first cause, knowing that God is all there is, knowing that the work that we are doing, whatever it is, however big, however small, it is all perfect. And one last quote by by Terry in A New Republic of the Heart, achieving a unified voice is not only possible, it has already begun. Although one may have to look beyond the usual places to find it, it is expressing itself in countless ways, in the simple goodness of people helping neighbors, treating strangers with courtesy and respect, taking care of people in need, and deferring their narrow self-interest in service of larger purposes. It is in the social mycelium that is always underfoot, unnoticed, but pregnant with power. We are on that cutting edge. We are what the world has been waiting for. And we get to continue to live our lives in innovation and creativity and power and faith and love and all of those things together, birthing into form this new vision of what a world that works for everyone looks like. And let's go to prayer. And what I know is that there is only one. This one thing that is infinite, it is absolute, it is eternal, it is grand and magnificent and unfathomable. This one thing, this intelligence that knows how to make planets orbit around stars, that knows how to birth nebulas into existence, that knows how to create oak trees from acorns. This one intelligence that is all of the beauty and the love and the truth and the creativity and the power and the essence and the grace. It is the deep breath. It is the I am that I am presence, and I know that this I am presence is the I am that lives in each and every one of us here. I know that we are all this one, living out God's life as God, to God, with God, from God, giving and receiving one another, that is all the Spirit, that is all the one. Our breath is God's breath. Our life is God's life. Our ideas are God's ideas. And so what I know and affirm is that we are on that cutting edge. We are birthing that new vision. We are creating the world that works for everyone. And that every action that we choose, every step that we take, every breath, every thought, every idea, every intention, all of it together connected is moving us forward into this new, greater, highest idea that is ever unfolding, ever expressing, ever individualized into and as each and every one of us. And so I give great thanks for each and every person in this room, for each and every person that is on this cutting edge with us. I give great thanks for the laughter and the joy and the sorrow and the tears and the life, living life fully in each and every person. I give great thanks for all of it. And I especially give great thanks for my life that has led me to this now moment that is so beautiful and so divinely perfect in every way. And so I simply release my word, knowing that it goes out, turns into stardust, transforms, and then simply pours back into our lives greater and more magnificent than anything we can possibly fathom. And therefore we can simply let it go and let it be and know it is done. And so it is.